my name's Rob. I'm a creator from Sydney, Australia, and as you can see, I've had the S22 Ultra for a week to shoot with it. Unfortunately, I just had to go back. So this video is mainly going to be going out and shooting on the phone, a bit of behind the scenes. So for those of you who are looking for some quick answers and just want to know my opinion on it, should you buy it, should you not buy it, let me quickly unbox it and then I'll answer that question. Activate the unboxing.
Okay.
Right, it's unboxed. I do work with Samsung Australia. This video is not paid for by them. They haven't told me what to say and what not to say. They've just given me access to the phone. And so my bias here is going to be towards wanting the phones to be good. I might in the future do a whole video about why I like Samsung phones and Android in general, especially as a photographer. But for this video, just know that that's my bias. Right, so disclaimer aside, here are my thoughts. Just like a lot of people have already said, it's like taking the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, the Note 20 Ultra, and then combining them together with all the best features of both. There are new features available, taking advantage of the new processor for low light video. As far as the actual stills go, being able to shoot RAW on all the lenses, that is something that's pretty welcome. I kind of will answer the question from my perspective, and that is like, would this be the phone that I want to use next? Yes. So having to use the Fold 3 every day as a daily driver, I miss the camera, I miss the zoom camera. And the fact that the S22 offers that with the option to shoot at RAW is amazing. The telephotos are still mainly for good light, and that hasn't really changed. The S22 gives you the pen, the cameras, the big screen, the big battery, and for a lot of people, the only thing that's missing is the SD card. Do you miss the SD card? I don't. I've had the Note 20, I've had the S21, I've had the Fold 3, and now the S22. So there's a whole bunch of photos that I've taken on all these devices. They're all more than capable. So it does have the 108 megapixel main camera sensor, which most of the time is just generating a 12 megapixel photo. So the question you might have is, why do they have that chip at all? So I've got a special guest now to help answer that question. Let's introduce Nerd Rob. Thanks, Rob. Hi, Nerd Rob here. So you might be asking, didn't the camera array stay pretty much the same? What's changed? It's still 108 megapixels. Why is it 108 megapixels? Why not just 12 megapixels? So no matter the camera, it's got to take a photo, do something interesting with that photo, and then show you the photo. And if it's a slow processor, and it's doing too much cool stuff, then you'll see it slowly appear to you, and nobody wants that. So as the processors get faster, they can do more cool stuff in a shorter amount of time, so you don't notice it. And because it can do more cool stuff, Samsung are now applying that same sort of effect to video as well. So they're now doing more cool stuff per frame so that you can see video at low light. So you might be asking, why 108 megapixels? So we all remember from high school physics that all light is electromagnetism, just at different frequencies. So with all the electronics going inside the camera, with the different antennas, there's a possibility that all that electronics can actually interfere with the sensor itself. And that's where you get noise from. My guess is that by having a high resolution sensor and using that technique, they can minimize the noise on the actual sensor and actually get better low light performance computationally than they can by actually having a more sensitive electronic circuit inside the camera. That's just a guess. In other cameras, they've got more room to move, different ways to shield the sensor. Maybe there's less opportunity in the phone that small. All right, that's me. Thanks for having me. Nerd Rob, what a guy. I do find a lot of people like asking, when should I jump into pro mode? When should I jump into 108 megapixel mode? Look, I'll be honest with you, I think I never jump into 108 megapixel mode. Hang on a sec, mate. I had a quick play with the 108 megapixel mode and the adaptive pixel option. 12 megapixel JPEG, the 108 megapixel JPEG, and then the adaptive pixel JPEG. And I found the adaptive pixel one to be slightly off in the colors. I'm not sure what's going on there, but maybe it's just a software thing. Either way, it did actually inspire me to potentially try the 108 megapixel mode more because the detail is obviously higher there. As Nerd Rob explained, it's there for a different purpose. So I guess if you're looking for that high resolution single image, if you use it, don't feel bad if you don't use it because you're still taking advantage of it by shooting in the normal modes. So on the way out to check out our location, I came across this spider hanging from the web, and it's such a good example to show off some different elements of photography. A really common question I get is, when should I use pro mode? It's difficult to answer, but the simple case is when the phone's not really doing what you want, you can take control. So as you can see here, it was difficult to tap on the spider. Shooting wide didn't really look that good. And that's the sort of thing you might normally come across. However, as soon as I saw this spider was lit up by that light, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I already know that I'm going to use pro mode, so I switch over to that. And there are two dark areas to the left and the right of the spider. I chose the right just because the spider was more front on. Now what to do is to zoom in to get rid of the bright background next to it, set my ISO really low, and focus on the spider. Focus peaking in manual mode makes it super easy to actually know when you're right on the target. So one thing I did learn doing this is as you change between the lenses in Pro Mode, it actually keeps the settings per lens, which is pretty useful. So it means when you swipe over that big reset button, it becomes very handy. Once you've nailed that one shot, then you can sort of try a few other compositions. I kind of got a little bit carried away here. I was trying to be creative with a different composition, and then the spider decided it was time to leave. So we move on. Sometimes when you go taking photos, you just need to start. So I saw this rock on the side of the road, decided to pull over and give it a go. My main focus was on the S Pen just to make sure it worked as I expected it to, so later on I could just do a bit of a range test in a different spot. I decided to use a 1 time and crop in sort of 4 or 5 later because the 3 crop was a bit too tight, so that's the crop I want, that frame there. I'm in Pro Mode, so I can take advantage of the fact that I can split the exposure and the focus up by tapping and holding on the screen, put the focus on the rock where I'm going to stand, and the exposure in the sky because it's going to be the brightest part. In the normal camera mode, when you double tap the pen button, it actually flips the camera into selfie mode. So I just was here testing in Pro Mode. When you double tap it quickly, nothing happens. It just takes a photo as per normal, which is good. It means when you're far away from the camera, you don't accidentally flip it around as per I was showing you there in the normal mode. So once I was all set up, everything in the right spots, it was time to double check my settings, make sure raw photos are on, and then go down and be a model. Pressing the pen a bunch of times and just posing in slightly different ways. This is the rough photo I got, and then just a quick Lightroom edit to brighten up that foreground. It's a great little warm-up photo. It means everything's set up and I won't miss any important settings later. My initial plan was just to test how far the pen would go, but I kind of noticed something really cool. In the Pro Mode for video, in certain video, there's a little color profile wheel up there. We actually can go in and set color grading that is going to be baked into the video that you're generating. So as you can see here, here's HD footage, and I've kind of given that faded sort of film look to it. Now for testing the pen range, I thought it'd be a good opportunity while I'm walking all the way out there just to kind of show you what I actually did with the torch. You see how the torch is really bright shining in the lens there? What I actually do when I'm out shooting with the torch is sort of cover it with my hand and just make sure that the light's not pointing straight into the camera. And that means when you're editing it later on, you actually can see the person holding the torch and the camera's not blinded by the light. As far as the pen range goes, as you can see, it's pretty far. I was surprised. But further away, I usually use an involumeter app which triggers the camera for you. The pen doesn't give feedback, so you kind of need that confidence sometimes that it's actually taking photos, especially if you're walking far away. Just a couple of video examples. Static shot at 4K and a handheld at HD. It's actually very good in low light, as you can see. And I just wanted to get a feel for the actual place, and I started to kind of take some photos of different compositions. Here's an S22 versus S21 shot. S22 definitely brighter, maybe a little bit too bright. So whenever I go somewhere new, I always try to kind of just play around with different compositions, get the sort of phone set up, get the settings dialed into what I would want to shoot, and then just to kind of prove the point, someone actually walked into the tunnel as I was doing that. So I quickly turned around and then just tried to snap some frames as I was walking through the center there to get that symmetry. But this edit is actually just cropping out the things that are not necessary telling the story of this photo. There's noise and unnecessary features, so cropping in is the first step. The rest of it is just a standard edit for exposure and temperature. So this is another example of sort of me having this idea of what I wanted. I could see the light there on the pathway, I could see that brightness, and I knew that if I stood sort of in the middle there, it would give me this sort of silhouette. I kind of call it like the James Dean New York photo, if you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so I sort of set up as per usual. I lock in my settings, lock in the focus. I'm using the Pro Mode so I can get that raw file. And once I've got that locked in, I know where I need to go. I'm going to use the pen to trigger the camera. And then after that, it's just a matter of kind of trying a bunch of different spots and then reviewing them to make sure that I got the shot that I wanted. Editing on the phone in Lightroom, I just used the masks to brighten the background behind the subject to make him pop out. Oh, subject's me. Make me pop out. So here I am finally in the tunnels. So the main thing I wanted to test here in this section is kind of shooting raw and also the new sort of nightography JPEG mode. Just so you see how it goes and sort of compare them side by side, not to pit them against each other, but just so I know how they work. So when I'm shooting, I kind of know which one to use and what their like pros and cons of each are. I didn't know what it was going to be like, so I brought a bright light, which actually might look familiar. So I can see how far the dynamic range would go. And it's a little bit too bright, but that's okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is sort of just check my setup. Kind of look roughly where I'm going to stand and sort of set all the settings. And I'm going to use the S Pen to trigger it. I'll try and stay as still as I possibly can. I'm going to come back and actually check the phone every now and then just to see that I'm actually taking photos, and I might actually open up some of the images in Lightroom just to zoom in on them and check, say, for instance, with the raw files that I'm shooting correctly. Turns out I was tired, in a rush, excited maybe, so I made a few mistakes, but I got enough photos to get a good sense of what it's like. And that's the point, to go out there and shoot and just test it so you know what it's like for the next time. So I found overall the night mode did an amazing job. Even when I moved, it was able to sometimes exposure blend the images without being able to tell. So other times it didn't quite grab the highlights, so they're a little bit blown out. And other times I saw some artifacting around where I'd kind of moved around and things. I think I was a little less patient than I thought I was. As far as the raw photos go, the DNG files, I think I was a little bit underexposed. That was sort of my bad. And I was moving a little bit, or I didn't set the focus to the right spot. So some of them are soft, but that's just really me being rushed and tired. So here are a few shots and quick Lightroom edits to show what's possible. So in summary, I think the night mode is actually vastly improved. So you can get some pretty amazing low light photos. You just need to kind of bring the exposure down a little bit or add some contrast. I did notice the option of actually being able to change the JPEG output of the Pro mode in that little color wheel at the top. I think that's really cool. I think I'll be using that a lot actually because of the desaturation of the main camera. So I did think that building a person out of camera equipment was a cry for help. Luckily, a friend responded and actually came to help me. We're getting some pretty cool photos and about to get kind of what we wanted. Here are a couple of shots we got from that. And as you can see, unfortunately the rain got us, but looking forward to trying them again in the future. So unfortunately, this one has to go back now. If there's stuff you'd like to see, use the comment section below to actually let me know what areas you want me to deep dive in or what you liked or hated about this video. I'm still pretty inefficient at putting these things together, so if you do want to help encourage me, I have set up a Buy Me a Coffee page. I've set up a Patreon website. You'd be the first person to sign up to my Patreon. And in the future, if I do finally launch my mobile photography course, then those people will obviously get early access and a significant discount. If you can contribute, that would be amazing. I will see you hopefully in the next video. Whoa. What's it like to be a robot?
I like to imagine myself a bit like an aurora borealis, a surge of charged multicolored photons dancing through the atmosphere.